Fast Forward Masterclass brought to you by Vodacom Business. I hope you enjoyed the jazz there that we were playing for you as we started. It's a beautiful day out here in Gauteng, and I know I've got guests from all over the country. So if you're new to the Masterclass, welcome. If you've joined us before, welcome back. Just a few housekeeping before we go into the detail of what we're here to do today. On your screen, you should be able to see a chat panel, and we'd love to hear from you as we go with the session, and we'd love to have you engage with our speakers, with each other, get to know each other, and also share ideas and so forth on what you've been up to and what resonates. As also, there is an opportunity to ask questions. There's a question panel where we encourage you to share your questions so that our esteemed panel of experts can respond at the end of the session. So how the question and answer works is that you ask a question and all of you can then vote for the question that you want to be at the top or to be answered first. And then we will take those questions in that order. But let me introduce myself now as we go in. My name is Gopolang, Ngale-lekgetha, as you saw on the screen, and I'm the executive head of Vodacom Business Marketing. So before we kick into it, I see some familiar faces there and names rather, not faces, but I see Dion, I see Banele, I see Katie, I see Keke, hello Kim, as well as Lesego. Use that chat panel to give me a wave. And also to let me know where you're from, where you're joining us from. I'll wait to see who's engaging with me. There we go. Thank you, Tlotlo. Where are you guys from? Use the chat panel to just tell me if you're from Gauteng, the Western Cape, KZN. There we go. Well, thank you for engaging with me. I just wanted to make sure that we all know how to locate that chat panel so we can engage as we move forward. So as per usual with the master classes, we really try and bring to you experts or people who can share their lived experiences on what they've seen to help you as small business owners and entrepreneurs really thrive in these challenging times. We've themed these masterclasses Smart Connections, hoping that we can help you connect those dots in your business, but more importantly, make new connections with other experts and your peers on the call, as well as connections around how all of the technologies that we share with you, all of the tips and tricks that you hear from our experts can help you grow in your business. So today, we know that the economy has really taken a hit, and most of you have probably experienced that firsthand. So we really want to help small businesses, as you guys play an integral role in our communities and in our society, because you really are the bloodline. You stimulate employment and productivity in this country. And for that, we really want to ensure that you understand the importance and you consider what makes your business ultimately investable and what good practice looks like for your business in the sense of the financial well-being of that business. So having a solid financial plan will allow you to save money, will afford you the things that you really need, and help you achieve those long-term goals that we know you all have in place. So of course, in this masterclass, you'll hear about the key considerations that impact the financial health of your business or can impact the financial health of your business and ultimately help you grow and be more attractive to investors. And to help with that, I've got two lovely ladies from Standard Bank, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they've got tons of accolades that they've all got under their belts, but I'm going to hand it over to them to introduce themselves, starting with Joret, who will then hand over to her colleague, Jenine. Joret, over to you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, Gopolang, and welcome to everyone on this line, and thank you very much for taking time out of your very busy schedule and your business to join us in the masterclass today. So it's really a privilege to spend this hour with you because you are, as Gopolang mentioned, the most important in the economy. Small business drive a GDP of a country. So just a bit of insights from my side. My name's Joret, but you can call me Jo. I've lived in a few countries, and the one before I came back to South Africa was China. So in China, I got a lot of insights and experience in the work environment, but also personally. So I worked at a subsidiary of Standard Bank called Standard Advisory, and we collaborated with our partners, ICBC. So ICBC is the biggest bank in the world. And I really got a lot of insight on the SMEs and how they help SMEs around the world. I've been working with Standard Bank Group for a few years now, and I'm back in the sunny South Africa and supporting 14 of our other African countries, excluding South Africa, that's Jenine, but I help and support them to grow and grow their businesses. So on a personal side, yeah, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I've got one little daughter, but she's got 4 legs. And I'm super happy with the level 1 to get out and ride my mountain bike in South Africa. So enough about me. I'm going to hand over to Jenine to introduce herself.
We've got a fancy title called Heads of Enterprise and Direct Banking. And where Joret looks after Africa regions, I do the same job in South Africa, however. It's a really exciting space to work in. My background within Standard Bank also spans across enterprise and supply development. So where I did spend a few years within the enterprise development space in particular. So lots of work around what it means to develop and grow small businesses before going into a far more scaled market in terms of how we go about funding every business that is out there from a micro and small enterprise perspective. I also have a background in process engineering and a background in communications and a background in teaching. So I am one of those individuals who has had multiple career changes, probably all within the first 10 years of my career. But it makes for some very interesting and exciting conversation, just those different experiences and how they've all led up into really culminating into the role that I run today, and being able to support small businesses in particular. I am a mom of 2-legged human beings. So I have got a house full of 3 boys, aged 6, 7, and 8 years old. And it's just nice that we also in these virtual environments where we don't get to see each other face to face and interact, suppose just get to know a little bit more about who it is that you're speaking to, and that Joret and I are far more than just the titles that we hold with Standard Bank, but that we are human beings as well with lives and interests and hobbies and experiences. So apart from running after my 3 boys, spending time with my husband, I'm also a keen cyclist and runner. I'm not very good at either one of those things, but I'm very proud of the fact that I get off the couch and I do them. So that is definitely something just from a personal perspective from my side. If we just, we've got a short presentation as well to just really walk through, and that we'd also love to make available afterwards to the audience. But just after this introduction, to maybe really get into it very quickly, and I'm going to trust that the slides are up and moving towards just the small business phases and what it is that we're looking at. If there's any glitches or anything, we can just get the heads up about it as well. Thanks so much. So we see multiple different phases of small businesses, and we just think this is the important part to perhaps start the conversation. It's not the thing we want to focus on necessarily, but just as a starting point. And I won't go through each one of these bullet points. Again, this is something we'd love to make available to the group afterwards. However, what I did want to just mention is that there are different phases. Typically, we see a startup phase, which is approximately that 0 to 12 month type of phase. We see the survivalist type of phase, which goes, you now know what it is that you're doing a little bit better, and typically lasts up until that 3 years type of phase, which is where you're starting to grow the business. You're starting to manage expenses a lot closer. You're starting to hire. You're potentially starting to fire. So there's a very different need that starts coming in post that 12-month phase of starting. And then we see this 3+ year phase, probably one worthwhile thing to also mention is we typically see drop-offs of businesses, and by drop-offs, I know businesses often are spoken about as not being successful or failing at a certain point. I suppose we call it a drop-off at that particular point in time. It's not always a failure because there's always something to learn from it. But there tends to be a drop-off after that 12-month period where you either make it or you don't as a business, because you either got a customer base or you don't that's buying your product or service. And then we see that again in the 5-year type of mark, which is always an interesting one. And the reason you see it in the 5-year mark is because that's the space where a business is typically scaling. And your need for funding or investment might become really apparent at this particular space, because this is typically where you're also looking at growing beyond the realm where you're comfortable. So this might mean growing into a new market, so different geography. It might mean taking on a new business line or pivoting your business line or expanding your business line. It's typically also a space where to accommodate that, you need to accommodate further distribution. You need to be hiring a little bit more. So there's quite a bit that happens in that 5+ year mark, where we also see a big drop off for businesses able to scale or not. And there's very different things that are needed at these particular times. Just to be clear, today we're going to be talking a bit more around some of the things that we see. In fact, we call it the 7 big things we see successful businesses doing, and that we see businesses being on top of. And I think the beauty of the 7 things we see is that we see it consistently across all of these phases. So it's not something to only do when you're in that 3+ year phases. It's not something you only do in the startup phase. It's something that we see successful business owners doing from day one and then beyond as well. So we will talk about that shortly. And after we've talked about the 7 big things, we're going to end off with some items that we see help businesses to be investable. So make something that is fundable at the end of the day. And this is not just funding from a bank. I think what we have found is whether you are seeking funding from venture capitalists, from angel investors, even to a certain extent from grant funding, that there might be slight nuances that are different from what you need to provide as information and input, but that a lot of the fundamentals of what makes you an investable business across all of those different types of financiers remains true. And we'll just touch on a few of those items and speak to them right at the end as well. Just a reminder that you can use the comments if there's anything, or the chat box. So if there's anything that you are not quite sure of, or that you'd like to ask a question around, please do just pop it in the chats for us as we go, and we'll address it at the end. And with that, we'll get into the first of our 7 big things with Joret.
Great, thank you very much, Jenine. So let me just go to the next slide. Okay, so kicking off with the 7 big things to consider as a business owner when you transform your business through these stages, as Jenine mentioned. And just from an Africa perspective, the rest of Africa, it's similar across board. So it's not different, nuances in South Africa versus in Zambia. In business, these are very much similar in all countries. So the first one I just want to touch on is the examine goals daily. So goal setting is really one of the most important activities that you can do in your business, regardless of how old your business is, where you're located, how profitable it is, or what you sell. So the goals really help you to stay focused, and that can really prevent your business from become stagnant. Your business goals also keep you moving forward, and also then set the stage for that ongoing success and that growth that Jenine mentioned earlier. So although we also often think that in our personal life is the New Year's resolutions, but it's very different in a business, and it's extremely important to work through those goals and adjust those goals throughout the year. So you should be setting up multiple goals each year and track the progress and really refine the strategy that you are following in order to achieve the goals on the ongoing basis. So to help you get started, or to recap some of those business goals, I've just put a few of those together so that we can just chat about it again. But to pick one or two and really turn them into the SMART goals. So SMART standing for to be very specific in your goals, to be very measurable in the goals, to be action orientated. So is it going to move my business forward? And is it relevant to the business situation at that time? And then that time bound, that T at the end, to make sure that there's a time period to you actually achieving that goal. And just a few to think about, develop and increase that personal brand of your business. So many times small businesses, the success is very reliant on the business owner and his or her abilities to stand out in the crowd. A second one, a goal that you need to look at is how do you increase that traffic to your business online presence. Now, some of you might not have an online website, but I think the world is moving into the digitization or the digital online world. So how do you use social media to present that brand of yours? How do you use websites, and how do you connect and use the data from the online presence to understand what your clients are doing? So that's why that goal is very, very key. Revamp, relook at your business plan. The world evolves, your business evolves, so your business plan has to evolve. Reduce ongoing business expenses. So that's a critical component in any business, to make sure how do we reduce that cost, reduce debt, changing in your operations, optimizing processes. That's very important. Ramping up productivity is another goal. Your level of productivity can directly impact your bottom line. So it's never a bad idea to set a goal on a monthly basis or a daily, weekly basis to how do I boost my productivity of my business, but also the productivity of my team. Another one is customer service processes. Again, listen to the client. Even in our commercial bank, customer has to be the center of everything we do, because if we don't bring in the voice of the customer, and in your world, the consumer, you do not know what they need and how they change their behaviors. Networking opportunities is another goal, and sometimes we forget about that when we're very busy in our day-to-day lives. So how do you set a goal for this year, next year, to actively network in your small business, attend conferences, attend these type of masterclasses, business network? That's where you connect with your peers and people at events to really take your business forward. And then a personal goal that I think is important for a business is just to take personal time to prevent the burnout. You are your business is you. Without you, there's no business. The second thing is understand your finances and your financial structures. So many people who start running a business do not really engage themselves deeply in the financial matters. The reason might be because not limited knowledge, not enough knowledge, or interest in recording transactions might not be that important at that stage. The preparation and analysis of financial statements, unfortunately, normally comes stone last, and it's so extremely important for a business, especially as Jenine mentioned, for future funding. It's really critical to understand and get it right. So by not understanding or having the discipline to do these financials and understand it, really lead the business to make poor decisions. So for instance, to identify key metrics for the performance of growth, profitability, and then decision making on where to take your business to. So probably the one thing that I've learned in China is that, or what I've seen in China was, data is absolutely considered the new gold. However, if you have data in different pockets of your business and not understanding how they come together and not using it correctly, it really makes it irrelevant. So you can use data to your benefit if you really capture it and then understand the flows of that. So some examples just in this statement. Understanding the difference between profitability and that cash flows in your business, really, you might see an increase in your profits and you might see an increase in your revenues, but your actual cash is tied up, for instance, in your inventories if the inventory management is not used correctly, or if you're not collecting on time, so that collecting of receivables. And that usually is true for a growing business. But how do you manage that? So cash flows, the forecast of it, the projections of that is vitally important to make business decisions and also success to your business. Another misconception is the tendency really to compare your business without the understanding of the underlying financial ratios. And I apologize if I talk a little bit of finance, but is your return on investment, your gross margin, what is your break even per product? It's really important to benchmark these things and really the impact it has then on that growth of your business. One of the last things that I'll mention on this one is the taxation. So in taxes, how do you use taxes to your benefit? And it might sound a little bit, but if you think about debt, there's a tax shield normally in a business. So how do you then get that tax benefit back into your business? So really, and that's why I'm saying really understanding that financial structures. Then Jenine will talk about access to finance later, so I'm not going to touch on that. But again, I just want to make the statement, if you do not have the understanding from the financial or have the visibility of the financials, the track record, it is a difficult situation then to obtain funding later on. So it's critical to have that sound numbers visible and transparent. Just understanding the markets and the clients, market research can be really used to address a wide range of strategic and tactical issues, but there are probably 4 key areas which market research is mostly used and mostly beneficial. So 1, defining and monitoring your brand. The brand is the part of the bedrock of any organization, even our big organization. This is especially true for your businesses because, again, the brand is you. You are the brand, and if it's not carried across properly, people won't know about it and it will fail. So the priority then must be to ensure that the components of your brand are clearly defined and understood internally, but is also then articulated in a way that maximize your brand salience, the differentiation in the market, and the credibility in the market. So that's why market research, to understand your target audience, to understand the value proposition you bring to the market, that hierarchy of features, that then define the positioning of the brand, the personality of the brand, and then the essence of what it brings to the market. And these brand components, if it's not clearly defined and understood, the result is likely that it's a confused brand, but also then a confused consumer and possibly the failing in a brand. So that's the first one. The second one, quickly running through, is launching a new product and service every now and then to make sure that that lifeblood in your business keep going and that future vision is always there. How do you, extend and grow that business of you with new products and revenue lines? Designing and improving customer experience. As I said, happy customers browse longer. They spend more, they return more regularly, and they spread the love. But unfortunately, if there's a bad experience, that is reported more widely, and sometimes it's very difficult to come back from that. So, and then the marketing campaigns is critical because it's how you carry across and how you speak your customer or client language in those marketing campaigns. All right, the next slide, let me just go to the next slide. So creating or taking that decisions based on your future, and this goes hand in hand with the data comment I made earlier, which is critical for your business. So I've spoken about the goals. Your goals should align to your overall vision for your business, which then include using the data to either build the right team, to build the right brand, identify the partners that you would like to be associated with, and those partners that will also help you drive the success of the business. Based on your decisions on the data, that in return will then support you to understand what type of funding you need, what type of investments, where you can go for the funding of, the support of that, and all the need for your business, what your clients are doing online. That data will tell you what products are performing, which ones are not. So again, technology is very important. So ensure that the running of your business is secure. whether it's suppliers, logistics, technology. So when I say that is to make sure that you have sound contracts, because if one of those legs in the value chain fails, then you will have a problem in running your business and you need to scramble to maybe get another partner. So make sure from the beginning those negotiations and contracts up front is very, very controlled and it's in place. And then just on the last note on this for technology, the world is moving digital. And when I lived in China, I did not use cash for, I think, the last 3 years I stayed there. Everything was digital. All the small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses, us as consumers, we will walk into a shop, everything is digital. And digital brings that data-rich view of your business. So make sure that you move with the times, that you start migrating your business more digital, but also have that physical environment, but very much focus investments on digital. Then the last one, I'll very quickly go through it. Commit to compounding. The lowest cost solution is not always the best solution. So I know small businesses sometimes have got an issue with cash flows, but please investigate those different options when you have to make a decision, whether it's technology or any component in your business. Just really investigate deeply before you just jump to the lowest cost solution, because a lot of businesses get burned by this, especially. Underinvestment, it's never a good idea. So if you understand your finances, always make sure that you invest back into your business, because that will drive you to that next phase. Fear of the downside. Develop success from the failures sometimes. Discouragement and failures are the two of the surest steps for success. So just keep going. Tax savings, as I mentioned, is critical. Refer back to what I said earlier. Just understand those financial structures, and then maintaining the record. It's the biggest myth is to not care about those. It is one of the most important things, the visibility of that if you go for investments. So dreaming big, I think that's a wonderful. Yes, please dream big, grow your business. There will always be risks, but those risks are absolutely worth it. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Jenine to just go through the other slides. But I would like to remind you as well, as the ladies mentioned, there is a Q&A box for us to respond to your questions afterwards. So Jenine, over to you.
Thanks, Joret. And thanks so much also just going through those first four. If we just move down to number 6 and 7 as well. Number 6, we talk about networking and asking expert advice. I think this is such an important one, and it's something we do see successful businesses doing. We see a network being created, and a network starts with your first connection, and your first connection normally enables multiple other connections from there as well. And there's different places that you could make these connections and build this kind of network. There's various incubation or acceleration type of programs. I think we're very fortunate in South Africa to, in fact, have a huge supply of programs and initiatives that, beyond providing access to information and resources, also provides the ability to network not only with experts, but also with other small business owners. So having that network, having that community, and having the humility to also ask for advice and input. It's not something you always need to take, but certainly getting that input, we see it just rounds off what goes into a business then. I think another thing we really see when it comes to networks, and it's potentially a step further than networking as well, is considering how you go with others who have gone before you, particularly if you are a first-time entrepreneur. And then we often say the most successful entrepreneur is the second time entrepreneur, so second or third or fourth plus entrepreneur as well. And that's simply because you've got to feel at that point in time for what works, what doesn't work, how to take a risk, when not to take a risk, what to have in place. And what we find is that it becomes a lot easier to build businesses after you've built the first one. And because of that, it also makes a lot of sense to speak to others who have built businesses before you and to get that kind of expert input and advice as well. So definitely getting involved, building that network, attending sessions like this. I think these are amazing platforms, and it's fantastic that Vodacom's providing this kind of platform for ongoing input and ongoing expert input and advice as well. So use the opportunity, ask the questions when you have them, connect afterwards. This in itself is a networking opportunity, even though it's virtual, as you get to see who else is on this call, who can you reach out to afterwards, how do you network with them, how do you start building out and asking that kind of advice and input that you need in the journey of building your business as well. One thing that I always like to say as well on these webinars, and it probably would have been useful to say this right in the beginning, but I'll say it now in any case, is very often we can attend, get some great insights or input and walk away going, oh, that was fantastic. What I find really works for some business owners is to actually jot down just one or two things that really stand out to walk away with and apply. And that's where you really get the value out of the type of networking and connection type of sessions as well. And then, of course, there's mentorship, there's coaching as well. I think we've really seen the benefit in speaking to either experts, like I've said, who've gone before you in business ownership, but also industry experts. What's happening in your industry? What does that look like? And getting that type of input and advice. And then number 7, which is probably the most boring, but my favorite topic to talk about, which is taking care of hygiene factors. This is such an important one, and it's very close to my heart, because I cannot tell you how many businesses I have seen who missed an opportunity because they didn't have their hygiene factors taken care of. And I know Joret touched on some of it when she spoke a little bit about tax, etc., and also the opportunity in that. But there is something about making sure you're on top of everything. And by everything, I mean things like your CIPC registration and the annual fee that comes with that as well. So annually looking at that process to make sure you're not in the process of deregistration. Things like having your BEE certificate up to date, having your tax clearance certificate up to date. These are the things that might seem minor and quite frankly boring to do, but again, they stand very potentially between you and a big opportunity. We've seen it, for example, in corporate supply chains, getting all the way through the rounds, but needing to submit a tax certificate right at the end and not having an up-to-date tax certificate and losing out on that particular opportunity or tender or whatever it may be at that particular point in time. So really important to be on top of this. Very often, I also see that there's a misconception that these hygiene factors interfere with agility. So just something to bear in mind there as well. I firmly have seen it and believe that you are able to be more agile as a business owner because you have these hygiene factors taken care of. That is what allows you to move with speed with everything in the background being in order. It really, really does assist with this particular one. And then my last point around this is also to consider being personally involved in it. There's a lot that you could outsource. But particularly when you are a smaller business, I think being personally involved, or at least knowing where all the up-to-date documentation is, when it expires, when does it need to be renewed, really helps you as part of being, again, on top of your business, being able to take care of these things, and then being able to work with agility around all the other items as well. So definitely one that is close to my heart. And I hope you will be able to see the value in that as well. If we just go to the last one, Joret, and yeah, again, we'd love to share this presentation afterwards, and you could have a look through this in a bit more detail. There's a lot of bullet points on this one. I'm only going to touch on a few of them and just highlight, and then that would be the wrap up for us to then also just see if there are any questions. These are just considerations when it comes to seeking funding. And some of the things, again, when we spoke about in the beginning, that really helps you to be an investable business that may need to be considered. Not all of these will be relevant all the time. but it's important to bear it in mind and consider it at a point where you are looking for investment. And again, investment, as I've mentioned in the beginning, could be in the form of investment in funding or debt from a bank or from another micro institution or financier. It could also be investment from, for example, venture capitalists and angel investors, etc. All these institutions look at some form of this. So they're looking for your personal considerations, such as skin in the game of the business owner. And what we mean by that, it's a concept that you might hear quite often, particularly when you're speaking to any form of funder. But what they're really looking for is to say, what are you bringing into this? Because we want to be able to make sure that funding is not being provided, or equity is not being provided into a business, or debt isn't being provided into a business, and the next day shop can close and there'd be no interest in the business or in repayments thereafter either, if there's a repayment structure in place. So there really is this consideration for saying, what is it that you bring into the game as well? And sometimes that may not be money. It may be other things as well. It might be time. It might be having given up your day job. And there's different elements, but there really is it helps you to be an investable business if you can articulate what your skin in the game is as well in your business. There's also a very big item around not only the ability to carry debt. So that is when you think about, particularly if you come to a bank and you're requesting funding, the assessments that get done to see whether you can qualify, that's ability, but there's also a willingness to carry it. So a desire to carry it, understanding what it means to repay, and having a willingness to carry that and to make repayments, particularly where it comes to debt. From a collateral security perspective, there's different considerations here. It ties in very closely with having skin in the game. And very often, I think the only thing here that I really want to highlight is this personal assets of owners. You'll very often find, particularly in the earlier stages of your business, it's very difficult to remove your personal from your business, and your track record in your personal capacity from your track record in your business capacity. Both those items do get looked at, particularly for funding for micro and small businesses. To say, well, what do the personal assets of the owners look like as well, and could that possibly be used as security against skin in the game? Security is a form of that when it comes to potentially offering debt and or investment or equity into your business as well. It is not only on debt that sometimes collateral security is looked at, which is an important thing to consider. One of the things we do recommend is to keep separate accounts for your business and your personal finances. So that it helps to create that one level of separation between your expenses for your personal versus your business needs as well. So definitely is something important to bear in mind. Of course, we'd love it if those accounts are with Standard Bank, but just something to consider to keep those two separate in particular. And then we talk about the owner, very often referred to as the jockey as well. So you may have heard the term back the jockey. What does the jockey look like? But really what we're talking about there is talk to us about the business owner, or those who are running this business on a daily business. What are the skills they bring in? What are their qualifications? Where is there a gap? And very often, again, in a smaller size business, there will be gaps, particularly if you are a sole prop. So if you are and that's it in your business, or a single member, single director business, this is very apparent. You can't be everything, and you simply can't be an expert at everything. There's no ways anybody could be one of those things. But a big thing for consideration there is knowing where are you lacking certain skills, or you don't have a certain skill based on your experiences or qualifications, and what are you doing to supplement it? And there's very different ways. It's not always about hiring. It could be using freelancers. It could be using suppliers, contractors, etc. as well. But really looking at that, involvement of the owner also becomes really important. So financiers and especially actually VCs and angel investors as well really want to see the owner full-time involved in their business if they are the ones seeking funding. There are variations to that, of course, but that involvement is really important. And then risks to consider, really important as well, is how are you able to answer and navigate some of these these items, right? So it may be risk associated with your industry. In COVID-19, we can talk about a few examples that may have had industry risk. So for example, if you're a business in the liquor industry, we know that a number of lockdowns have happened that have also resulted in no liquor sales. And how could that impact your business if you are in the business of liquor? So that could be one example to know there's an industry risk. It's associated with a particular point in time, but what is your plan around that? How are you saving and investing for that? Particularly now that we know that there are different waves and the possibility exists, are you able to articulate what your plan is to navigate? Location, so where you're based, are there risks associated with that and what are you doing about it? Competition. Again, there's so many times we speak to small business owners and they don't know who their competition is. That is a problem. You need to know who's your competition. You need to know what about you stands out from your competition. And again, you've got to be able to articulate that. So how do you have an answer for that? How do you explain that to others? And of course, then what are some of your barriers to entry? So yeah, examples could be certain certifications. So if you think about the construction type of industry, you could get by in the construction environment, but you could get by a lot better if you have certain certifications in place or certain registrations in place. What are those certificates? What are those registrations? What are your barriers to entry or to getting further growth and scale in your business? And then just our final few thoughts as we wrap it up, things to just keep in mind as well, building a strong balance sheet. So without getting into the technicalities of this, the best way I can explain this is also when your business starts making money, how do you reinvest that money back into your business? There's this huge temptation when you've landed your first big contract in particular to take the proceeds or the profit from that particular contract and to spend it hopefully on a Porsche or a Lamborghini if the profit is as much as that. But to spend it on something from a personal capacity, it takes a lot of restraint to understand the life cycles of a business, that your next contract might not have the same kind of profit or your next contract might not be next month, and to be able to pace yourself in terms of what do you take up for personal expenses. And I'm not saying don't live. I think there's definitely something to be said for living. However, what can you also take and reinvest as many times as possible into your businesses? The most successful businesses we've said do this reinvestment cycle on a continuous basis. And what you find is as they reinvest, the business grows and grows and grows, and those profit margins start becoming higher, which means you have more to do with the profit at the end of the day that you can invest into yourself as well. Protecting your cash flow. So we often talk about profit, you'll talk about revenue. What really is important for the successful business owners being aware of what is happening from a cash flow perspective. What does cash look like in hand or in your bank account, and how do you best use that? And then, of course, doing a course if you don't understand something from financial management, being able to tell your story in numbers and financial management is a really important component as well. And then very last point to make is being adaptable. I think if there's anything that we have learned over the last 2 years, minus a few months, it has been the art of being adaptable, being able to pivot, knowing how you're going to be adaptable, and knowing what your plan is for the future as well, but at the same time being flexible enough to be able to change up that plan and pivot. And that is where we finish and end this particular section. I know Joret and I had a lot of fun just prepping for this. And we love the work we do, and we'd love to engage with you beyond this as well. So please feel free to look us up on LinkedIn and engage with us professionally as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that, ladies. There was so much information in there and lots of important things for small business owners and entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs, second-time entrepreneurs to know about. Just for those of our guests on the call, I just want you to go to view the poll that we've got running. The poll is on again next to the side panel there, where you can maybe just go give us your thoughts on those questions being asked there. We'd love to see what you are challenged with in your daily life and your daily business, so that we can get some input and guidance from our experts here on the call. While our guests are doing that, for me, what really stood out from what you ladies spoke about was about building your brand, and doing that by embracing technology and digitization. So using social media, as you've mentioned, and ensuring that you've got that online presence that's out there. Also knowing your business by using the data that's available to you. And also getting your house in order, really, getting all those important paperwork ready and up to date as far as possible, and ensuring that you're separating that personal financial account from your business account. For me, those really stood out as things that all of us, as well as our guests and entrepreneurs on the call, can heed as small wins, to help them be more attractive for investors and for potential funding. And I just wanted to check from you ladies, where do you think, or where can our guests go find this funding or this potential investors from? I mean, obviously from you guys, but how do they go about doing such things?
I'll kick us off on that particular one. I think there's various platforms and various places. A quick Google search will also show up quite a lot, as well as your network. So I think this goes back to being able to networking and having conversations with individuals who have gone before you as well. If you open up to the small business community, you will often find about individuals that are looking for funding and what they have found and where they have found it. And I find that's a really good place to start, because you're often networking and connecting with businesses that are similar to yours. So you really want to find those points of success alongside them, and potentially find the same pathway of success as well when reaching out or looking for inputs, etc. There are other resources as well. So within South Africa, we've got within Standard Bank South Africa, we've got BizConnect, which is very easily accessible via the standardbank.co.za website. BizConnect is also a place for access to information that also provides some insights into what it means to be an investable business and how to go about looking for funding. And then I think there's one last item that sometimes feels very obvious, but it might feel very obvious because we work for a bank, which is to speak to your banker. I think we've got a set of bankers who are so well versed in the types of products and services and offerings that are available to small business owners, and very often look beyond just the bank's product as well into the broader network and what is available. And what I have found is that we find many business owners having great success in just picking up a phone and having that conversation with a business banker. And if you don't know where to start, of course, you can go onto your bank's website and see what their contact number is. For Standard Bank, that in particular is our Enterprise Direct environment, which is a virtual banker environment, and they can call you back as well if you want to discuss anything. But I find the advice there is sometimes very well founded.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I think just to what you mentioned now, the importance of these types of engagement. And that's why we at Vodacom Business really love doing this, because we feel this is what brings together small businesses so that they can learn from their peers, so that peer-to-peer learning, and of course hear from experts like yourself for free. So we are hoping that all of our guests on the call will be back next month on the 25th of November for the next Masterclass. We'll share the details, but also please go search for that on our Fast Forward website to see what's available and what's coming up. Now, Joret and Jenine, we have put a poll up, and the results of the question for the poll was, which one of these things is the biggest challenges that our small businesses, owners and entrepreneurs are experiencing? And most of our small business owners and entrepreneurs say that their biggest challenges are really understanding financial structures, as well as network and expert advice. So I guess getting access to that network and expert advice, as well as setting and examining their goals. And of course, then coming last was that decision making based on future projections for that business. So those seem like the four things that seem to be a challenge for them. Maybe you can help guide us or guide them on, how to do these things. Let's start with the biggest challenges, as they put it. So understanding those financial structures.
Yeah, maybe I can just take that one. The financial structures, there's online courses that they can really just go and do for free. Go to YouTube. There's so many financial things that you can learn. From a financial perspective, again, make use of what Jenine mentioned. In the financial environment, we have those experts to also help and just break that down in simplistic form. In our Africa region environment, in our other African countries, we also have those teams that really support the SMEs to just simplify it. There's documentation that we try to simplify, also accessible on the environments. And I'm sure as Vodacom, you guys will also do that to expose that to the entrepreneurs and the small businesses. So we will be intensifying that visibility. But in the meantime, please go to the YouTubes, how to calculate your return on investment, how to look at where the break even is in your product lines, and then the goal setting. Remember that's SMART. Just break it down into the SMART goals and always put the timelines to that, especially if you look at the financial environments, understanding how it works, what is important to work out a cash flow, and how that impact your bottom line of the business. So those type of things are freely available, and between Vodacom and ourselves, we will make sure that we have that available in our environments as well.
That's indeed the truth. And you've answered that perfectly to the question of where do they find that advice? You guys have lots of platforms to give that advice, as well as Vodacom Business with these fast forward workshops. And you mentioned a word that resonates very much with us, which is SMART. We also have smart business solutions, which help small businesses digitize their business, and focusing on things like digital marketing, which you mentioned earlier as well in your conversation, tools that help them be more secure, protect that data and that customers' data, also collaborate more easily now that we're living in a virtual world and business can really be done across borders, as you've experienced, Joret, with your travels. So SMART is something that we'd really also encourage. So smart finance, as well as smart marketing solutions and collaborative solutions, and so forth. So the other thing that I think we need to maybe help guide with is how to set those goals and examine those goals. How should small business owners really be checking if they're tracking well on those goals, or tracking well enough to be successful in finding that funding?
Maybe because I spoke about the goals, let me just take that one as well. So that is where that daily discipline comes in. And when we talk about goals, it has to be measurable. So how does it measure back to, is it making a difference in my business? And then have that theme of different goals, business goals, your resource, people and culture goals in your business, your financial goals, your marketing goals. Just break it up in those themes and then put those measurements to that. And you'll see, and again, like I mentioned, it's not like a New Year's resolution here. It is a daily discipline and it's a monthly discipline. So I think just coming back to discipline and be that smart breakdown of the goals, measurable and actionable.
Yes, definitely. I think in all our masterclasses, we've heard that word discipline come up every single time. And it seems like that's a characteristic that every small business owner and entrepreneur needs to possess to be successful in their business. We also have a question from Mpho Sihoto, and Mpho asks, personal and business assets, how critical are they when seeking funding? Is this a must-have for funding consideration by this program?
So it is not always a must-have. I think that there are different scenarios that get called for where it would be required. And it is a little bit of an answer of how long is a piece of string in this particular instance, because this is how long has the business been in existence for would be considered. It would be considered how much are you asking for. It's very different to ask for 50,000 Rand as opposed to asking for 10 million Rand. What phase is the business in? How many customers has that business got? And that customer could be a consumer, it could be a big corporate, but what is it that's flowing through from a cash perspective for services or product willing to be paid for? And then when all those items get considered together, we then start talking about things like personal business assets that need to be considered as part of that funding request as well. So it really does depend on multiple factors. I think what we found in experience, particularly in the early stages of a business, is there's often a belief that funding will solve all problems or debt will solve all problems. And our experience tells us that that's not the case. In fact, as a small business, you want to be really careful about taking on too much debt too early on. It could sink your business in the beginning days. So there's really something you have to consider that says, what's the best way to grow your business in the beginning stages? Well, quite frankly, it's to get on board customers and to get paying customers in. That's the way you start. That's the way you grow your business. That's your form of funding in the beginning. Where debt starts coming in tends to be more in the phase of you're looking for that growth, you need a little bit more. And there, like I mentioned, it's very dependent on how much is needed, etc., to determine what kind of assets might be needed. But maybe to just really shorten it up as well for you, no, it's not always necessary, but you've got to bear in mind all the different facets.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that guidance, ladies. We've got a few more minutes with our guests, so I just want to give you each an opportunity, firstly, to give each of our guests here in this virtual room one tip each. So one tip from you, Joret, one tip from you, Jenine, and then also give them your LinkedIn handle so that they know how to find you and get that guidance. So let's start with you, Jenine.
I'm going to go really simple, and on the one that I spoke about with such passion, even though it was boring, is go and check today if you have a business up and running, whether you have an up-to-date tax clearance certificate. That's what I want you to take away. So go make sure you've got your hygiene factors in order. That's possibly standing between you and your next opportunity. And my LinkedIn handle is super easy. It's Jenine Zachar, so you can find me very easily on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you, Jenine. Over to you, Joret.
Yeah, I think please make one of your goals to understand your financial positions and really just create that discipline around that, because that's going to open a lot of doors for you. It's going to give you a lot of, just that visibility in your business. And think digital data. Data is so rich, and that's going to help you understand what is the next best thing, because clients can communicate with you via that digital environments. That's going to create that data. You're going to build the new product lines, revenue lines. So please use that. And my handle in LinkedIn is Joret Olivier. And please connect with me. It will be great to see all your progress in your businesses. And please don't stop dreaming and don't stop reaching for the stars. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ladies. And indeed, embrace technology. And as Vodacom Business, we are here with our digital solutions to help you go further. And that's why we had this connection today with our Standard Bank colleagues to future-proof your business as you grow during these challenging times and ensure that you are thriving as you move forward with your business. So don't forget to join us again on the next masterclass that will be next month in November, the 25th. Please go check out the Fast Forward registration page where you can see all the sessions that are happening with all our business partners, people like the NSBC, people like business doctors, some Google, Facebook, all of our experts who are ready and willing to impart and share knowledge with you. And of course, with Masterclass, we bring on experts or small business owners who have been where you are now and can share their experiences with you so you can learn from their mistakes. But with that said, have a fantastic day, and thank you for joining us again on the Fast Forward Masterclass. And thank you very much to our guests from Standard Bank. Have a great day and see you next time.